All right, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Crypto with Chris. Got some interesting stuff to cover today as we've had quite a volatile week since my last show. So there's a lot to talk about. But before we get into that, we got to do all the reminder stuff. Firstly, follow my Twitch channel so that you can get alerts and also so you can comment in the chat. You do need to be a follower in order to comment, and I'd love it if more people did so that we can make this like an interactive show. Also, as a quick aside, I did have a comment in the last episode, and for some stupid reason, it didn't show up on my screen until like after the show ended. So I'm sorry, I wasn't ignoring you, and please comment again. In fact, I'm going to try testing that out here as soon as we get going. So. Secondly, if you follow, or I'm sorry, what was it? Secondly, if you go to my Twitch channel, you'll see that there's only two or three of my past episodes. This is because it doesn't allow me to store shows beyond 7 days. So after each show is completed, I upload them to my YouTube channel so that they can still be accessible. So go check out my YouTube channel for older shows if you're interested. There's definitely some really good stuff there, particularly my Wednesday episodes where I do kind of longer form interviews. There's some really cool stuff about lessons learned and about just digging into setting up TradingView and stuff like that. So please check those out. And then lastly, I have a Telegram alerts channel also, so you can get notified whenever I'm going to be on a show. I sometimes do shows for Real Vision also as well, and my Telegram is where you'll get notified for that. Um, all the links to the channel, sorry, my chat was tripping at me. All the links to the channel, to these channels is in the description of each video. So check that out. Also, a quick programming note. I've been traveling in the UK all summer, and I'm going to be heading back to my home on the East Coast this weekend. So I'm likely going to be changing up my schedule a little bit, probably doing the show a little bit earlier than I normally have been. But I'm really looking forward to getting back and having my full sort of production set up, and hopefully I can start polishing the show a little bit in the coming weeks. So keep an eye out for any scheduling updates. All right, and with that, let's get started. Let me turn on my camera and actually, I'm going to do a test chat just to see if it shows up. Okay, cool, it shows up. All right, so if anybody comments, I'll be able to see it. Um, all right, what do we got? Well, I'm going to start with the monthly here because honestly, the monthly is doesn't it's the only thing that doesn't look terrible yet, sort of. So let's look at what's good on the monthly. Basically, we've kind of come up and we're coming back down and we're sort of settled at the 10-month moving average. We did bounce off of it a little bit last month, and it basically opened sort of right on it currently. And that's about the best news we have in terms of the monthly, is that, it hasn't yet technically broken down. If you do look back here, let's kind of go back a little bit though. Like here's the last time that happened. And the we can see here too, the 10-month is about to cross up over the 20. That happened here in the last cycle too. That's totally normal, totally expected. That's a good thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that price has to follow it up though, or that crossing below it is the end of the world. I mean, it came back here and was trading below the 10-month for quite some time, in the early part of 2020, at the end of 2019. So not a big deal. Granted, we shot way above the 20-month, whereas here we barely went above it at all, if any. So certainly a little bit structure than what we had before. But again, I'm kind of looking, I'm sort of cherry picking, looking for goodness in this chart here, because once we get into the other time frames, there's really not a lot of good stuff to show. But I did want to highlight that if you do zoom out and kind of take a look, things aren't terrible yet. So that's what we have to go on. And not that they could get, terrible necessarily, but I don't know. I think we're due for some short-term pain, which I'm going to get into here now. So if we look at the week, well, let's see. I'll touch on this liquidity here for a second, then I'm going to get rid of it. Liquidity has just been sort of flat. It's down, but overall trending down, certainly on the weekly. Though on the daily, it did sort of poke up for a second, but then it's sort of rounded back over. But that's as far as I'm going to go with that. It's hard to really gauge any of this stuff on the daily with liquidity anyway. But let's look at the weekly here. All right, so the weekly is ugly, and I'll tell you why. So I think in my Monday show, I touched on rolling over and closing down and breaking down below this 20-week moving average. Um, well, here, let me look at this. So the last time I showed this chart, I went back, I was only looking at a Coinbase chart, and it only goes back like a few years. But I figured I'd load this up. I think it only goes back to like here, maybe. But I'm like, why don't I load this same thing up on the full history index and sort of see what we're looking at? And so I went back through and I looked at every single instance in Bitcoin's entire history where it broke down, where, it had a breakdown below this 20-week moving average. And literally every single time going back to, to the very beginning, well, I guess that's all. But going back to the very beginning, every single time it's done that, it's been at minimum a 48% correction before, resuming whatever trend it's in. I guess in some cases worse if it was in a bear market. But like, what does that mean for right now? Do I think we're going to have a 48, 50% correction? It's like it's so hard to say yes to that because it's like that would mean we'd have to basically roll over and round trip the entire year, go back to below the yearly open. And that just seems so unrealistic. Um, but it's kind of happened before, not exactly in the same way. Yeah, we almost round trip the yearly open here. Um, well, no, actually, take that back because that was the following year. But okay, so in this one, we kind of came down to here, nowhere close to round tripping. We got back to that 60 or 6,000 support level that we had held the whole year. But if we go back to 2015, we kind of did round trip the whole year. Here was the sort of the yearly open and boom, all the way back down. And I can imagine, sitting here in January thinking, oh, great, like what was it up at this point? Probably not as much as it is right now. But like if we look at this up to here, Bitcoin had almost done a 2x. Um, Granted, everything was a lot different back then, but boom, just all the way back down to the beginning. And this was way later. This was in like August, and granted we're in September now, but it was not much not much different in terms of the time frame. So that happened there. So it's like it can happen. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. And I'll talk about some other levels that I think are relevant. But I did want to point out that if this doesn't go all the way back down to the yearly open, that would be basically unprecedented. That would be the first time in Bitcoin's history that it had a breakdown below the 20-week moving average and did not correct 50%. So those aren't great odds. All right. So if we go back to here, what could happen? I've got a couple. I'll go back to these levels that I had drawn in. First of all, this is really ugly. Let me just say, because we had this breakdown and then we had just like meh, like nothing for a whole week. And then at this point, I'm like, well, most of the time when it breaks down, when it has a breakdown below the 20 like that, it's generally going to come back up. And I know I even said in my last show, likely it is going to come back up and sort of mean revert back to this 20-week moving average. And probably if it if it is to roll over like I suspect it could, this might be a good time to get out, to exit your positions and sort of wait for the situation to resolve itself. And what do you know? It came back up and it touched the 20-week perfectly, like to the dot. I mean, it's almost uncanny. It's kind of ridiculous. So whenever stuff like this happens, it always blows my mind. Like it's like who's doing this? It's like it's controlled by some machine or something. But like this is so crazy when this happens. Anyway, so of course it did come back and it touched the 20-week moving average, just like I said it probably would. But then it got immediately rejected. So it did its retest and then boom, just shot right back down. And I'll switch to the daily briefly for a second just to kind of point something out. So here it was coming back up, and I was like, okay, here we go. It's coming back up into this range where I might look to sell. And so I was, basically waiting to sort of see how things might unfold. I was expecting it to sort of do this more sort of arcing trajectory and maybe then roll over. I wasn't really expecting it to spend all of about 3 hours, at this peak and then immediately start retracing it. And so by the time it was already on its way back down, I was like, oh, is that it? That's all we're going to get? Just a quick 2-second touch and boom, it's here, we're back down again. And all we possibly, that is all we get. I mean, it could also roll up a little bit more and let people load up on some shorts, or whatever. But I do think that we are going to. I just really think my base case is that we have at least one more leg down. Now, what does that mean, one more leg down? I don't know. That could mean, honestly, as little as just to this sort of weekly invalidation level. We could do a double bottom on this previous sort of weekly cycle low right here, the previous 60-day cycle low also. So this is serving as like a really strong support level that we haven't even touched yet. And so, yeah, this could be all we get. It could just come down to here. Um, but the next levels I'm looking at are this level here. Wait, what happened with this line? This line got jacked around somehow. This goes up here. Um, the next levels I'm looking at here are this sort of weekly candle body that I've pointed out a couple times now as probably the next likely support range. And then beyond that would be the bottom of this wick, which would be the next support range down here. So these are sort of the key levels that I'm looking at. If we lose these, then yeah, we're going the full 50%. We're going back down to, 16,000, 17,000, somewhere in there. So I'll be paying close attention to all these. Obviously, this first one coming up is going to be this one right here. And I think this one will actually really be big. I think if we lose this one, it's not just going to be like, you know, kind of float around and then go back up. I think if we lose this one, we're for sure coming down to this next level. And so yeah, and now we're seeing these moving averages totally roll over both of these, and that's also not a good look. Um, you don't. This basically, this is a yes, we haven't had the 10-week fully crossed down over the 20-week yet, but this is sort of, for all intents and purposes, a trend reversal in my book. I mean, a full breakdown, come down to the bottom of the bands, come back up, retest at the middle, mean revert, retest at the middle, and immediately get rejected and bounce back down. There's just nothing positive that you can take away from that. And now, even if you look at it on the daily, where it has been sort of holding this level here as strong support for most of this bit, now we're, you know, now we're all the way underneath it. In fact, we opened sort of right at this level, and now we're inching back down. So, um, we'll see where the day closes out. We still got, several hours. So this could end up just being a wick, could still end up closing above it, but this isn't a good look. I mean, technically, yesterday's candle did close below this line, and so the candle open isn't even above it. So we'd have to end up in the green today. So far, yeah, we poked up for a little bit, but it's not looking good. Um, and yeah, so I think that this level is certainly coming into play. Um, what else do we got here? I think I want to go back and look to at the last time we had the full moving averages round over. So this was, again, I keep using this as a reference. It's tricky with this though. You gotta kind of take this with a grain of salt, because like this did shoot up way too far too fast, and so this was almost all but certain to roll over like it did. Um, Actually, it's funny. I keep coming back to the 2015 cycle because we had a lot of just this type of action dancing around with the 10 and the 20 week and rolling over. So I don't know. We could see more of that. We could just see some kind of dancing around like we do. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't go all the way down. Maybe it doesn't nuke down. Maybe it just kind of does this sideways action. Regardless, I think I just can't make a case for Q4 being bullish on any level, at least in terms of a technical standpoint. From a macro standpoint, there's definitely arguments to be made both ways. And certainly in a lot of the groups that I'm in, there's really robust conversation, making cases for both positive and negative Q4. But I just keep coming back to this technical. I keep looking at this chart and going, there's just nothing about this chart that looks good. There's, you kind of have to just take what the market gives you and accept it, and don't try to don't deny it, don't try to ignore it, and just kind of roll with it. And so that's what I'm doing. I rolled with it. I actually exited most all of my positions a little bit higher than this, and I'm just going to kind of take a wait and see. Now, do I get bit on that? Sure. Does it go up, and I have to enter back in at a higher price? Possibly. If it was going to do that, or if I was going to do that, I would probably be looking for it to, be setting higher highs here. Certainly get past this big nuke candle here. Like if it starts poking up and setting new highs above this candle range, that'll certainly have my attention. Um, Certainly, if we set a new yearly high above this candle, above this wick here, I will absolutely buy back in. So what do we got here? What's that level? 30, I think that's 31.86. So like, yeah, I was thinking somewhere around 32 off the top of my head. So like if we get up to 32, definitely buying back in. Um, I probably would before that though, because that's a pretty big stretch between where we're at now at we're in the 25s now. So getting all the way back up to 32 would be a pretty big hit. So I'm really going to be kind of paying close attention to this moving average and these and just this sort of cluster right in here to see what it looks like. But it's got to have some strength. It can't just be a wick up. And right now, I'm just not seeing a lot of strength in the market. We had the ETF announcement come late last evening, or evening where I was anyway, that, of course, all the ETFs got delayed, like I was like, everybody was expecting. So that's nice because at least we can sort of take that out of the equation and know that that's what's happening. We did have the grayscale announcement that came, and that's what sort of made this big wick in the first place. And then immediately it just lost it, which is also a strong sign of weakness. First, you get this pretty significant announcement. Granted, it wouldn't have been nearly as significant as the other ETFs that were delayed yesterday. Because with the grayscale announcement, I guess just to clarify on that, it all it meant was that it kicked back the reason that the SEC had rejected it in the first place. But there's still a lot that has to happen for Grayscale to actually, get approved. It's essentially it just kicked it back to the SEC, and now the SEC has to basically come up with a new reason to reject it or delay it or whatever they're going to do. But it doesn't mean that automatically it's an ETF. So um, honestly, these other ones that are now looming out here at the second deadline, those could get approved actually well before the Grayscale one ultimately does in this scenario. So while that was bullish in the moment, while it was a bit of a punch in the mouth to the SEC and a bit of a setback for them, and that's always nice to see, it ultimately didn't have legs. And I think obviously this is reflected in this big weekly candle here. Like the market was like, okay, yeah, cool, but anytime you get a big candle, like particularly on a daily like this that just pumps up, anything that goes up that quickly has a very strong chance of just retracing, especially if it's on hype news and not on some kind of fundamental driver. So wasn't at all surprised to see this. Um, but at the same time, I wasn't expecting it to only spend like 3 hours touching this moving average. So I didn't listen to my own advice and I didn't sell up here when I told myself I probably should have. And instead I sold, somewhere down around here. Um, but whatever, at least I sold here. Well, for now I'm saying that, provided it goes down. And so that's better than nothing. That's still sort of up in this general range, which I'll take. I can live with that. I'd way rather sell here than certainly once it breaks down below this level here and is losing all the way down. So I did want to kind of touch on what does this look like from like a cyclical standpoint. Like what would this look like, say hypothetically, let's pretend for a second that it is going to roll over, by the end of the year, roll all the way back down to the yearly open. What might that look like from like a 60-day cycle standpoint? And so I kind of did a little thought exercise there, um, and I drew this out here, and already it's off. But I was just basically going on timing bands, not so much levels. And so I started a few days ago, and generally when you have a downtrending sort of left translated cycle, we generally get a day 20-ish high, followed by, roughly a day 60, 65 low. And so I kind of just repeated two of these. But here already we had this big peak and then this immediate retrace. And now I'm looking at this going, dang, are we are we gonna get a day 7 high here? And that's just gonna be it. And then it's just, whatever 50 plus days of downside price action to go from here. I mean, we could at this rate we'll hit this level here, halfway through this cycle. So I don't know. Again, this is all just a thought experiment. This isn't a prediction. This is just sort of me sort of mapping it out in general time windows, what that might look like, and sort of the levels that I'd be paying attention to. Notice I drew this one coming down to roughly this same level right here, which would kind of make sense. And then, again, just nuking back all the way back down to the yearly open. Do I think this is going to happen? No, but if it was going to happen, this is potentially what it could look like. It just sort of essentially repeats these same sort of 60-day cyclical patterns that we get. So, but of course, a 60-day pattern doesn't have to look anything like this. I mean, we've got one here that certainly doesn't look anything like any of these other ones. So they can be ugly and messy, and you never know what they're actually going to look like. But this already coming back down here, I mean, really, this is sort of this. Let me kind of zoom in on this. So I'm pegging this as the cycle low. And at the moment, we're pretty close to invalidating this cycle already. We're pretty close to having what's known as like a failed cycle already on day 7. So um, that's just that's just an ugly look. But I did kind of want to I did want to highlight this because I think that something like this is just worth, at the very least, something like this is important to have in the back of your mind so that if this does play out, you're not like, oh my God, the sky is falling. I had no idea. I never saw this coming. This wasn't supposed to happen. That's that's not at all how Bitcoin works. It totally can happen. It totally has happened. And it's actually fine. Like, this doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Year one of a 4-year cycle typically is always wildly unpredictable, and anything can happen, and it doesn't mean anything for like the long stretch. It doesn't mean anything for years 2 and 3. And so, is this a scenario? Sure. Could it go up from here? Of course. Could the ETFs get approved in the middle of October and throw a huge wrench in this whole thing? Absolutely. I mean, so here's October. you know we might just go sideways. There's every real possibility that we literally just go sideways. I mean, look, we did it here. We basically went sideways here for, you know, basically, what is it, 2+ months practically. And here, this is more or less sideways. Yeah, there's a little bit of a downtrend. So there's no reason why, in a low liquidity environment like we have, yeah, we had this big nuke. Yeah, this looks ugly. Yeah, we're about to invalidate the cycle here. But also, we could just go sideways. We could just go sideways for, another month and a half until the next ETF deadlines. Um, that's every bit as realistic of a possibility as this is here. So don't take this as, a prediction or fact or whatever. I'm just saying, I just want people to be mentally prepared that if this does happen, you can go, okay, yeah, this was a thing. I sort of knew that there was a chance it could play out like this, and that's okay. So just think about that, sort of stow that in the back of your mind, forget about it. And if it comes to fruition, then I'll say I predicted it. No, just kidding. Um, but at the very least, I'm mentally prepared for this. This, to me, honestly, this would be amazing. I would take this all day long, in fact, because I could pick up so much. I took a lot of profit basically buying in here and selling up here. Um, and so being able to sell here with my profit and then come back and rebuy at the yearly open, that would be like that would be just like the greatest gift ever. I would take that all day long. Am I hoping that happens? Perhaps on some selfish level, but at the same time, I don't want people to get hurt on the way down either. But yeah, no, like, this isn't a bad thing. This is honestly, for me, it would be a great thing. So um, I'm mentally prepared for this. I'm also mentally prepared for it to go sideways, or do any number of variations thereof. But there's all kinds of economic data that could come out. There's things that could break in the economy that would cause the Fed to pivot. As soon as the Fed pivots and liquidity starts coming into the system, that's gonna dictate all of this and change everything. So but until we know what's going on there and there's more clarity there and there's actually more action, right now there's all just speculation. There's lots of people saying that yes, things could break, yes, things probably are going to break, yes, we probably will get a recession, all kinds of stuff that could be looming anywhere between the next 6 to 12 months. So what does that mean for Bitcoin in the next 4 months? I have no idea. All I can do is sort of just come back to the technicals and say, what are the charts telling me, and go on that. Because all the rest of it, in terms of the economy, yeah, there's data to support varying thesis, but it's all just speculation. I suppose this is just as much speculation as anything, but at least from the technicals, this sort of tells you at least what people are doing right now, and what the the sociology is doing, and sort of what um, the human experiment is sort of doing. So I get a lot from the technicals, and I rely on them primarily because they at least, yeah, they don't tell you what's going to happen, but they do tell you exactly what is happening right now, to a large degree. And I think that that's really important. And right now things look ugly, and that's what I'm going on. So um, I don't know. Let's see. Let's take a look at a couple of sort of macro-y kind of stuff. I wanted to sort of look at stocks because one thing that was interesting, actually, that I noticed. So on this pump day, we had, what was it, Wednesday? I want to say Tuesday. Tuesday. On Tuesday, when we had this big pump day, I was like, oh, yay, grayscale, Bitcoin pump, everything's cool. But if you notice, on Wednesday, stocks had a huge pump too, across the board. All the markets pumped, had big up days, on all the three major indices. And also if we look at the dollar index, if I can find it. Whoa, big pump here all of a sudden. If you look at the dollar index, it sort of nuked on that day too. Big down day, on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now the dollar's pumping again. Dang, that's new. Um, so all of this so there was kind of a macro sort of blip that happened on Tuesday that honestly had nothing to do with grayscale. We had the Dixie going down, we had stocks going up. I feel like Bitcoin would have pumped that day no matter what happened, whether the grayscale announcement came out or not. Certainly, the grayscale announcement probably helped it, probably made it go up higher than it would have otherwise. But also, that's probably why it immediately retraced everything too, because it was just vapor. It wasn't really based on anything. So interesting to point out here. I think it's important when you see stuff, don't just look at what's going on in crypto. Look at look at the rest of the markets too. So we had this pump in stocks, and then stocks have been just very meh since then too. They've just been kind of floating sideways, um, and crypto basically just came right back down to where it was. I wanted to come back to this though. This is interesting. So this is actually pumped even just in the last little bit, quite a bit, which is certainly exerting pressure on all the other markets. Actually, what does this chart look like? So this is sort of the Dixie inverted. It's right back down to basically where it was. Uh, Wait, did I have no? Oh yeah, this is yield. I don't even know my own charts here now. So this orange chart is Bitcoin. Oh no, this is liquidity. I had a chart. I got too many charts. Damn it. Well, whatever. I can't find anything. Um, was it this one? Oh yeah, bond yields. This one. Okay. Oh yeah, yields back up too. Yields pumping too. This is 10-year bond yields. So yields pumping, dollar pumping, liquidity down, which makes sense. These are all correlated directly. Um, and so yeah, this is sort of exactly what is exerting pressure on stocks and crypto right now. So obviously, until this changes, this is another thing that supports more downward price action. So hence, I'm expecting more downward price action. Um, I don't think there's much else to touch on. Oh yeah, this. So today, it's first of the month. It's first of September. We're supposed to get it should have come out by now. Maybe it has, and it just hasn't reflected here. But we're supposed to get a new update to the PMI index, which I was hoping would be out by now. I'm super curious to see what this reading is going to be and if it's going to be higher. I really want to see. I know I've talked about this in previous videos. This is sort of a good proxy for the business cycle, and I really was hoping that this would indicate, more of a bottoming pattern here and potentially more of a trend reversal here. I know we had a little bit of a tick up from last month, um, but when did this actually update? It updated on July 1st. Um, June, July. Well, I guess we'll see. It hasn't updated yet, but I'm keeping a close eye on this. I'm super anxious to see sort of what this looks like because this is going to give us some good insight on sort of generally what the global economy is doing and if things are ultimately bottoming out and starting to reverse back upwards. So this is something that you pay close attention to. But this is also not like a very granular tactical indicator. This is something that it's more just like a general guideline. So anyway, um, yeah, I don't know. Is that it? This is super interesting to me. This really pumped up. I wonder if I could look at this on the hourly. Yeah, dang, look at that on the hourly. Just boom, boom. What was going on right now? I'm gonna have to go find out. So yeah, that's that's what's going on. It's ugly. I'll kind of breeze through some alts real quick, just to show you, don't get into alts because everything is just bleeding out, basically, including Bitcoin. Um, and so don't be in alts because they'll bleed out even more. So yeah, yeah. Anyway, just yeah, bleed, bleed, bleed. Okay, anyway, that's you get the idea. It's ugly. I'm not even gonna talk about ETH. It doesn't matter. It's all going down. It's all going down right now. Basically, for me, crypto is like super risk off at the moment, until something changes, until proven otherwise. But I'll be paying attention to see. I'll be looking for divergence indicators and things like that to sort of see when momentum could be changing. But at the moment, momentum is not changing. Momentum is to the downside until it's not. So act accordingly and protect your capital. Don't do anything stupid right now. So all right. I guess with that, I guess I'll wrap it up. I think I'll be. I know I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm going to be traveling over the weekend. Um, Monday will be a busy day for me. I may or may not do a show on Monday because I will have just gotten back. I'll be flying all day on Sunday. I'll probably be ragged. So we'll see. But at the very least, if I do a show on Monday, it'll probably be a little bit earlier in the afternoon for me in East Coast time. So I'm guessing, if I had to guess, I think my shows going forward will be probably a couple hours earlier than they are here now, or than they've been airing, I should say. So, but I'll update my schedule once I kind of have an idea. And I've got a pretty good idea of what I'm going to talk about next week too. I've got some fun ideas for Wednesday maybe too. So if I don't do a show on Monday, I'll have some good stuff coming up on Wednesday hopefully. So otherwise, have a good weekend. If you're a Formula One fan like me, enjoy the Monza race. I'm going to be stoked, looking forward to that. So yeah. Anyway, all right. Take care, everybody. I'll see you next week.